Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Adobe Extension QuickTip tutorial. In this one, I'm going to be showing you how to implement a Remember Me or password remembering feature for your extension. What this is simply going to do is store a local copy of a password on your drive somewhere, and then when you relaunch the extension, it can easily retrieve that based on the predefined file location. In the previous tutorial, I integrated a keyboard shortcut feature. So we're just going to be going off of what we created in the last tutorial and adding on this Remember Me feature, which will take some text that we put into a couple of inputs like this, place it into a text file, and then give us back the answer when we launch the extension. Before we get started with this video, I do want to remind you down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly on the channel, and down in the description you can check out the code for this in the GitHub link. You can check out this extension testing code and begin to integrate the code we're going to be integrating today, and also follow us there for coding updates. In the description you can also follow us on the Instagram for other live updates. If you're not already a member of the Discord server, you can come and join and get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, submit tutorial ideas, and hang out with a lot of our cool channel members and knowledgeable people. And if you'd like to help support us on YouTube and get cool perks at the same time, you can become a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP, link in the description. Alright, so I haven't actually implemented the password remember code into this yet, but we're going to just go off where we just left off. And we have here this input. This is what I'm going to change to be username, and the placeholder text here in the value is going to be username. And then I'm going to copy and paste this, make a second one, and call the ID password, and have the value be password. Now if we go ahead and relaunch the extension, we have our username and password. So the goal here is to then have a button we press. So we need a button. I'll just create a standard button. I usually do divs, but go ahead and just create a button here. Inner HTML, the button will just be login. And I'm going to set an on-click event listener for this. We're going to call it button click. So that way when we click on this, it's going to run a function. We'll say the function is called button click. When we click on it, it's going to say, hello, you pressed the button. Just to make sure that it works, so I'll relaunch the extension, hit the button, and it says, hello, you pressed the button. Obviously, this isn't a very great design, so very quickly, I know this is a quick tip, but I'm going to go into my styles, and we can just change main button here to button, and we'll say margin top 10 pixels, just a little small design thing. Now, when we click on our button, what do we need to do? We need to get the username and the password text. So we're going to say username text is equal to document, and we want to get the element with the ID username. So we'll say get element by ID username. And to get this text inside of here, the thing we need to call is the value. So I'm going to say our username text is equal to the username element dot value. Then I'll go ahead and copy and paste this, call this one password text, and we'll just change this to password. Now let's go ahead and just double check that our values are what we want here. I'll alert username text and password text. We'll run it. Just put in my username, my pass, and now we get my username and my pass. So we have this information. Now we need to send it into a file in a predefined location. In my case, I have here a folder in my documents called NT Productions, and my goal is going to be to create a custom file. It's basically going to be a text file, but I'm going to change the extension of it. So I'll just say like rememberme.rem, remember, and that could be our file to just contain a true or false, or sorry, a simple object containing our username and password. So I'm going to first go into our JavaScript extended. This needs to be updated. We always need to do inline. Don't know why that wasn't set up. But what we're going to do inside of our JavaScript extended is create a variable called our remember me file. We'll set this in our specific location we just defined. Mine's going to be in my documents. So we'll say relative location to the documents, NT productions. and the file name is going to be remember. So this file is just a reference. If it doesn't exist, we can't read anything from it. But every time we press login, we want to store information into this file. Ideally, what we're going to do is create an object. So I'll say just obj is equal to something. Now, we're going to have two properties. I think they're pretty obvious. We'll have the username and we'll have the password. Right now, they're both going to be empty, so we have our temporary object. Let's enclose this in a function called write to remember me file. We're going to take two arguments in this function. The first is going to be our username. The second is going to be our password. And then we can simply set them like this. In fact, let's just, to make sure we don't get any weird results, we'll change the username text, password text. So we have now our global remember me file, which I want to open in order to write to it. What are we going to write? We're going to say remember me file.write. We're going to take our object and we're going to stringify it by saying json.stringify. What this does is it converts a programming object into the string equivalent, which is easily written to files, and then we can easily parse it back when we read it in. So I'll say remember me file.close. So we've opened it, we've written our object with our password and your username, and then we close the file. So we need to now basically run this write to remember me file function. We're going to do that when they press login. So we have our button click, which is our login. We now have our username text and our password text. We need to now make sure we have our CS interface included. In this case, it's being included after all this code. So I'm going to put this script include before my HTML inline JavaScript. That way we have access to this CS interface and can go into the JavaScript extended. So I'll create a variable called CS interface, lowercase, set this equal to a new capital CS interface, which is being finicky. And then we can say CS interface, the variable, eval script. And the name of our script is write to remember me file. And that, of course, needs to have a function. Now, what we're going to do, we need to pass two arguments, the username and the password. So I'm going to break out of my single quotes so I can add in our username text. But this needs to be stringified. You could also do double quotes between it, like this, and then add the username text. But what I like to do is to keep it simple and just json.stringify any information that I send down into JavaScript instead of having to deal with quotes and stuff. Then we have a second argument, which is json.stringify password text. We need to fix this. So now we should have the username text and the password text both being sent as arguments to our write to remember me file. Now let's go ahead and execute this and see how it works. Go ahead and type in my favorite username and just a random password. Hit login. Nothing was alerted to us, but if we look now, we have this remember me file. I'll open this with Notepad. You can see we have our username, Penguino138, and our password stored in this object. So that's cool. We've now remembered it. Now let's go ahead and access that as we load up our extension for the first time. The way we're going to do this is with probably an init function. So I'll say function init, and then I'll call it as this the extension is first run. And inside of here, I want another CS interface object. The reason for that is because I'm going to go down into here, and I want to, instead of write to this remember me file, I want to read from it. So let's do the opposite. Function read remember me file. We don't need any inputs. We already know where it's going to be located. So we have our remember me file.open. We're opening it to read this time. And we're going to want a variable just called object We'll set our object equal to our remember me file.read, and we want to json.parse this entire thing. Remember, we stringified it on the way down into the file. On the way back, we want to parse it from a string to a more programming friendly object. Then we'll take our remember me file and close it, and we'll return json.stringify our obj. You could probably maybe avoid this step, but I do this just to be safe, to go from parsing back to stringifying, even though it's read in as a stringified object. But now this will return our file if it has anything. Actually, we need to set up an if statement. If our remember me file doesn't exist, then we can't really do anything. But if it exists, we can read it and return that object. If not, I'm just going to return json.stringify 0. Or actually, we can just say null. Now back in our HTML, after our init, we'll create a variable called password object. We'll grab our CS interface and eval a script. And the function of the script we want to eval is our read remember me file. We don't need to pass any arguments, but for the second argument, we're going to run an anonymous function. The return of that function, remember, is our password object. So we can just say our object here. And we'll set our password object equal to json.parse obj. Now I'll go ahead and alert our password.username and our password.password. And this should be our password object. Go ahead and run this. Looks like we didn't get anything. Value the script. Read remember me file. So if it doesn't exist, return null. Otherwise, open it, read it, and return it. Let me try adding a set timeout. Very occasionally, this is required for some reason. We'll set it to 1/4 of a second. Close our init with that. I don't seem to be even feel like I'm not getting into our file itself, the JSX. It doesn't look like the JSX is loading at all. Remember me file, read remember me file. It should be going in there. Let's compare these. So exactly the same. Let's see if we even get here. It doesn't seem to be working. So something here is tripping up the process. I'm going to try and maybe remove a function or two. I can try and maybe remove some stuff here. This should be firstly saying alert here, but maybe it's not getting past here. It seems to be our event listener that was tripping us up. That's my bad. So we'll still just run the init. We don't need a set timeout. This is looking for an input ID. We don't have one because we changed it to username and password. So now we should see our username and our password. Those are stored. If I go ahead and type in my choices again, resave it. Now let's open it up. We have penguin138 and my password. So all that's left to do now that we have this information, we're going to grab our username dot value. And I believe we can set the value just like this, equals that. It's possible that we need to set the attribute, so let's just check this. Change this to password. And nope, as you can see, we can set the value just like that. So now we have a button that saves the login information they chose and then reloads it as they first launch the extension. You can take this to the next steps by adding like a checkbox, whether they want to remember this particular username password combo, and much more. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. Down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly on the channel. And down in the description, you can check out the extension testing code for this and integrate this and try it out for yourself for future projects. Make sure you follow us there for coding updates, and in the description, follow us on Instagram for other live updates. If you're not already a member of the Discord server, you can come and join and get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, submit tutorial ideas, and much more. And if you'd like to help support us on YouTube and get cool perks at the same time, you can become a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP, link in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.